Hi, welcome to Raj Online. Today we are going to discuss about the stages of project management. As you all know, understanding the life cycle of the project, followed by managing resources, budget, resource allocations, and all everything are essentially important for any application to succeed with. So for that, understanding about the project management process is essentially required and which is needed for every individual. So this is nothing to do with the role what is that we are playing. Sometimes depends on the kind of expertise or experience what we have. So we may act as a project manager. So please do remember, it is not designated. Maybe a project management role will be given someone relating to technical or some people relating to business analysis as well. So knowing about the project management process, how the project management process is being involved in it, and what are the different stages are there in project management and what steps to be taken into an account is what are we going to discuss in today's video. So when you see in a high level note, when you talk about project management, so these are the different stages we have. So one is initiation phase. Second is planning phase. The next we need to know about the execution and controlling phase, followed by last but not least closing phase. So these are the different phases are there in any of the project management. So when you talk about the initiation phase, whenever we got the requirements from the customer, apart from the project management planning, what is that we need to do? So in this regard, in the phase of initiation where project management team should understand about the objectives of the project. So understanding the right essence of project objectives are essentially important for any project management team to perform with. Make sure these objectives must be aligned to the business objectives, because for a customer called X, you are providing the solution. Unless until if you don't identify the business objectives, what customer wants to achieve, these project objectives aligning would be difficult. So project objectives are defining based upon the business goal and objectives, what customer wants to achieve in their business. Because customer is investing some X amount of money for an application development or for a solution to be provided by a vendor. For sure, they expect some return of investment out of it. Hence, project objectives plays a vital and important role in this. Next, once the project objectives were identified, the next is that project management structure has to be identified here. What is that project management structure do we need to understand? Apart from that, we must be knowing about the constraints and authorizations. What are the constraints are we having while we are developing an application or when you are working on the application? What are the constraints do we have and all? Followed by this, what kind of authorization process do we need to follow in order to make it more convenient and better? This is what generally we call it as initiation phases. So in the phase of initiation, we must be knowing about the project objectives. We must be knowing about the project management structure do we need to follow, followed by the kind of constraints as well as the authorizations, all that. Means authorization, approvals, all that. So once the initiation phase done, the next is planning phase where we need to update the statement of work. What is that we are about to do? Followed by this project planning. So this project planning has to be, even this project planning document is something required even for customer, even against to the RFP request for proposal documents, what is that they have submitted. We need to give a project plan report detailing of the work, what is that you are going to do, how much manpower do we require, what is an approach are they following to develop the project. At the same time, what is the technical infrastructure, mode of developing an application, as well as the approach, all that. So all these things has to be mentioned under the project plan, including the kind of regulatory procedures, standards do they require to follow. All this has to be mentioned under the project planning. So this is where generally project planning report is all about. Followed by this project planning report, project planning report and all that. So we must be knowing about the glossary of terminologies. What is that we are going to include in it? Apart from that, we must be knowing about what are the assumptions, constraints, critical success factors of the project. What are the different assumptions we have to keep into an account? Assumptions of developing a project. Followed by this, we must be knowing about the constraints, possible constraints to do the project or to develop the application. Followed by this, what are the critical success factors to make an application successful? Because what are the important factors should we require to consider to make an application successful? So these things comes under critical success factors. Followed by critical success factors, the next is that project plan updates. What are the updates do we require to make it more important? So those project planning updates and all everything should also be mentioned under the planning part. So initiation is the first phase, where the second one is called planning. So once the planning is done, the next is that we were thinking of two things. One is execution and controlling. So in this execution, we will be highlighting and we need to understand about the deliverables of the project based upon the objectives what we have identified in the initiation phase. These project deliverables must be understandable here. So once the project deliverables we understood, we must be knowing about the acceptances of the deliverables. What are the acceptances should we taking into an account? Followed by this, what is the actual effort and completion date? Because deadlines of the project is also required to know, because what is the effort are we going to make and completion dates, completion data, all that. So dates of the effort estimation, how much time will it be taken? Because technical complexity is involved in developing the project. So that effort, what is an actual effort it will be taken by our team members to complete the project. So effort estimations and all everything we have to make. That is completely depends on the technical complexity of the application. Followed by this, when is this project has to be completed. So based on that, whatever the model do we require to choose, everything will be decided upon, right? So are we going for a traditional way of approach to complete the project? Or do we need to follow agile process? So because these things and all everything we do in planning, so the same thing will be continued in the execution here. Possible changes, if any, happens and all, this is where generally this change request documents will be prepared here. Change request documentations and all everything will be prepared, followed by the kind of issues, if any. So all these things comes under the execution of the project. So once the execution is done, the next is about the controlling phase. Execution is what the phase generally we do. So once execution is done, the next is about controlling. Controlling nothing but how you are going to control the project. For that, what are the different reports are you going to prepare? Either these reports may be a performance or status reports, or do we need to know about the planning of changing risk request and all, or else if you are preparing any kind of change management results or issue management, all these things comes under the controlling phase. So once the controlling phase is done, the next is that last but not least, the closing phase. Where in this closing phase, we must be knowing about the evaluation of the product followed by the vendor evaluations and all. So what is the product are we going to evaluate and all, followed by what is the acceptance documentation. What is that we are going to accept? The acceptance documentation has to be updated. Followed by legal and contract and budget closures, like what are the legal conditions which has to be followed by the contract agreements, budgets. At the same time, project archives, if there is any. At the same time, whatever the redeploy resources are we following in order to make it more elaborative. At the same time, what are the outstanding issues and changes and all that. So this is all comes under the closure part of it. So initiation phase, planning phase, execution, controlling, followed by closure. So once the closure phase is done, the next we call it as cross-project improvement, where we need to apply the past project contents and all everything, lessons, what is that we have learned, so that it is more better for us to improve the quality of the work, what is that we need to provide. So which is really helpful for us for the future projects to complete with. So this is what the overall structure being a project management team or a project manager who is involved in application development, one should be taken care of. For more details regarding project management, followed by any kind of training needs, please reach out to the contact details, which will be posted in below to this video. Thank you.